The Forbidden's warning. The emergency session of the Galactic Union Scientific Council had been called with unprecedented urgency. Ambassador Zefkar of the Vortheka Collective stood before the assembled representatives, his crystalline exoskeleton shifting through nervous hues of amber and crimson. "The humans have discovered Tlasa," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of accumulated dread. A collective shudder rippled through the chamber. The Kelrani delegation's tentacles writhed in distress, while the silicon-based Nexari representatives dimmed their bioluminescent panels to near darkness. Tlasa, the Death World, that had claimed 17 different civilizations over the past 3 millennia. "Surely they will heed our warnings," chirped Counselor Vixif, her bird-like head tilting with desperate hope. "Even humans cannot be." "That foolish." Zefkar's expression grew grim. "You underestimate them, old friend. I have studied their species extensively since first contact. They are the only sentient race in known space that actively seeks danger for the mere thrill of it. They call it adventure." The chamber fell silent as the implication settled. Every species present had lost explorers to oceanic worlds' planets, whose vast seas seemed to devour intelligence itself. The pattern was always the same: initial contact, promising readings, then silence. Rescue missions would find empty ships floating above pristine waters. Their crews vanished without trace. The hegemony of minds lost their greatest philosophers to Aquinas Prime. Zefkar continued, his voice hollow with remembered grief. "The Stellar Collective's most brilliant engineers simply disappeared on Hydro 7. Each time, the smartest among us went first. The water feeds on consciousness, grows stronger with each mind it consumes. And now the humans approach Tlasa," whispered Elder Morgan of the Ancient Archive, "the most dangerous oceanic world ever catalogued." The emergency transmission from Captain Tobias Mercer of the human exploration vessel Intrepid Dawn had been typically brief and infuriatingly casual. "Beautiful blue marble down here. Control. Readings are off the charts. Definitely going to. Take a closer look. Mercer out." "We must warn them immediately," declared Zefkar. "Send every available diplomat, every xenobiologist, every survivor who has witnessed what these cursed waters can do." But even as the orders went out across subspace communication networks, Zefkar felt a cold certainty in his hearts. He had watched humans charge headlong into black holes to satisfy their curiosity, had seen them befriend species that had tried to eat them, had witnessed them turn certain death into unlikely victory through sheer, incomprehensible audacity. Humans wouldn't listen to warnings about Tlasa. They would dive in anyway. And perhaps, as Zefkar thought with a mixture of horror and fascination, that might be exactly what the universe needed. The plunge Captain Tobias Mercer floated in the airlock of the Intrepid Dawn, checking his environmental suit's seals one final time. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, Tlasa's endless ocean stretched beneath them like a mirror of liquid starlight. "Captain," came the voice of Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka over the comm. "We're receiving another priority transmission from the Galactic Union." Ambassador Zefkar sounds genuinely terrified. Mercer grinned beneath his helmet. "Tell the good ambassador that humans didn't become the youngest species to achieve interstellar flight by playing it safe, Tanaka. Besides, look at that water. It's practically calling to us." "Sir, with respect," interjected Chief Science Officer Marcus Webb from his monitoring station, 17 civilizations have gone missing on oceanic worlds. The statistical probability of Webb, Mercer interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "When has humanity ever let statistics stop us from doing something spectacular?" The science officer fell silent. Through the observation deck, the rest of the crew watched their captain with a mixture of admiration and concern. Pilot Zara Okafor shook her head, muttering something in Igbo that roughly translated, to humans are beautifully insane. Atmospheric analysis complete, Captain, reported environmental specialist Jack Morrison. The air above the ocean is perfectly breathable. Water composition is ... unusual. High concentrations of minerals I've never seen before, but nothing immediately toxic. Mercer activated the airlock sequence. Then what are we waiting for? Humanity didn't conquer Earth's oceans by staying in. Boats. The outer door cycled open, and Thlasa's warm, salt-tinged atmosphere rushed in. The ocean below was impossibly clear, its depths fading from crystalline turquoise to deep sapphire blue. No visible life forms, no coastal features, just endless, perfect water stretching to every horizon dot without hesitation. Mercer dove. The impact sent ripples across the mirror-smooth surface, and immediately something extraordinary happened. The water around him began to glow with soft, pulsing patterns of bioluminescence. Not random structured, almost like neural networks firing in slow motion. "Captain!" Webb's voice crackled through the cone. "The water's molecular structure is changing around you. It's responding to your presence." Mercer floated, treading water, his enhanced suit providing perfect buoyancy. The luminous patterns grew more complex, forming spirals and fractals that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "Webb, are you recording this?" "Every second, sir, but Captain ... The alien warning transmissions are getting more frantic. They're begging us to leave immediately." Mercer watched the light show intensify around him, feeling an odd sense of ... welcome. "Tell them humans don't scare easily. Besides, I think Thlasa is trying to say hello." Above, the Intrepid Dawn's crew monitored their captain's biosigns, watching in amazement as both human and ocean began what appeared to be the galaxy's first peaceful first contact with a water world. Neither they nor the terrified alien observers knew that something ancient and patient was stirring in Thlasa's deepest trenches, drawn by the fascinating taste of human consciousness. Songs of memory 3 hours into his swim, Captain Mercer discovered that Thlasa was a storyteller. The first memory came as he floated on his back, watching binary stars paint silver paths across the water's surface. The ocean around him suddenly shifted, its molecular structure rearranging itself into perfect replicas of Earth's Pacific coast. Sand materialized beneath him, complete with the exact temperature and texture of Venice Beach on a summer afternoon. "Impossible," breathed Webb. "Over the cone. Captain, the water is accessing your memories somehow. It's recreating your childhood beach with atomic precision." Mercer sat up in the phantom sand, watching ghostly palm trees sway in a breeze that felt impossibly real. The scent of sunscreen and salt air filled his environmental suit's recycled atmosphere. "It's not just accessing them, Webb. It's experiencing them with me." The scene shifted like a lucid dream. Now he floated in the Mediterranean, age 16, on his first deep-sea dive with his grandfather. The memory was so vivid he could hear the old man's voice through his diving mask. "The ocean remembers everything, Tobias. Every tear shed into it, every ship that crossed it, every life it sustained. Respect it, and it will teach you secrets older than civilization." But then the memory became something more. His grandfather was there, not a recording, but somehow present. His eyes filled with an ancient wisdom that hadn't existed in life. "You understand now," the impossible apparition said. "The water knows. It has always known." "Captain," Tanaka's voice cut through the vision, tight with concern. "We're detecting massive changes in the ocean's electromagnetic field, and you're not alone down there anymore." Mercer blinked, and the Mediterranean dissolved. He was back in Thlasa's alien waters, but now he could see them dozens of translucent figures floating nearby. Not ghosts, but constructs of living water, each one shaped like a member of the 17 lost civilizations. A Vorthic explorer with crystal-clear exoskeleton. A Kelrani philosopher, tentacles moving in patterns of greeting. They surrounded him not with menace, but with desperate curiosity. They want to know about Earth, Mercer realized, his voice filled with wonder. Tlassa has been alone for so long, and we're the first species to survive first contact. It wants to understand what makes humans different. The water constructs began to sing not with voices, but with harmonics that resonated through his bones. The song was made of memories, the laughter of children playing in Earth's oceans, the determination of sailors facing impossible storms, the joy of swimmers touching water for the first time. But beneath the beauty, something else stirred. In the deepest parts of Tlassa, ancient currents began to move. The planet's consciousness was vast and complex, with layers upon layers of awareness. The gentle, curious entity communicating with Mercer was only the surface dot far below. Something that had predated the 17 lost civilizations was awakening. Something that had waited eons for a species bold enough, reckless enough, to ignore every warning and dive headfirst into the unknown dot. It had tasted human consciousness now, and found it unlike anything that had come before. Chaotic, creative, beautifully unpredictable dot, and it was hungry for more dot, the ancient hunger. Singing stopped dot. Captain Mercer floated in sudden silence, the water constructs around him flickering like dying holograms. The gentle bioluminescence that had danced through Tlassa's depths began to pulse in a different rhythm, deeper, more primal, touched with something that made his instincts scream warnings his conscious mind couldn't interpret. Captain, Webb's voice carried a new edge of panic. Something massive is rising from the deepest ocean trenches. Our sensors are reading movement on a continental scale. The water beneath Mercer grew cold. Not the gradual chill of diving to greater depths, but an instant, bone-deep cold that seemed to leach warmth from his very soul. The crystalline clarity of Tlassa's surface began to darken, as if something enormous was ascending from the abyss. All stations, prepare for emergency extraction, came Commander Rachel Stone's voice from the bridge. Whatever's down there, it's not the same entity that's been communicating with us. But Mercer found himself unable to move, not paralyzed by fear, but held by a presence so vast and ancient that his mind struggled to process its scale. It was like being noticed by a mountain, or acknowledged by a planet's core. When it spoke, the words bypassed his ears entirely, resonating directly through his consciousness. Finally, one who does not flee. The voice carried the weight of geological ages. It had been old when the first civilizations discovered Tlassa, ancient when the universe was young. And it had been waiting. The others came with caution, with wisdom, with fear. They analyzed from afar, probed with instruments, sent automated explorers. But you you dove with abandon. You trusted. And in that trust, I taste something new. Around Mercer, the water began to change. Not the gentle restructuring he'd experienced before, but something fundamental, as if the ocean itself was being reborn. Currents that had flowed in the same patterns for millennia shifted course. Tectonic plates groaned in the depths as something unimaginably vast stirred to full consciousness. Captain, your neural activity is off the charts, Webb reported, his voice barely controlled. Whatever's happening, it's rewriting your brain chemistry in real time. But Mercer felt no pain, only expansion. The ancient presence was sharing its perspective, showing him Tlassa as it truly was, not just a planet covered in water, but a single vast organism. The ocean was its blood, the tectonic plates its bones, the electromagnetic field its nervous system. I have consumed the wise ones, the entity continued, and Mercer understood now why 17 civilizations had vanished. Their knowledge became mine, their caution, their doom. But knowledge without experience is mere data. Wisdom without wonder is death. Images flooded Mercer's mind, the hegemony of minds, beings of pure intellect who had tried to understand Tlasa through logic alone. They had been absorbed, not maliciously, but inevitably, their rigid thinking patterns unable to adapt to the planet's fluid consciousness. But you laughed at warnings and leaped into mystery. You brought something I had forgotten existed. Joy. Above, the intrepid Dawn's crew watched in horror as their captain's biosigns fluctuated wildly. But Mercer was experiencing something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly alien intelligence learning to feel human emotions. And in that learning, both human and planet were being transformed into something neither had been before. Real question was, what would emerge from that transformation? The deep covenant, the ancient entity's revelation, came not as words, but as a fundamental shift in reality around Captain Mercer. Tlasa wasn't trying to consume him, it was trying to become him. Or rather, to become something new by merging. Human unpredictability with oceanic wisdom. I have been alone for 17 billion years, the presence whispered through the water. Every species that found me brought fear, brought analysis, brought the desire to understand and control. They could not simply ... be. And so they became part of me, but incomplete, hollow. Knowledge without the spark that creates it. Mercer felt his consciousness expanding, touching the edges of something vast beyond comprehension. He could sense every molecule in Tlasa S oceans, feel the planetary heartbeat of tectonic shifts, experience the slow dance of evolution that had shaped this world. But more than that, he could feel the loneliness, the crushing isolation of being the only conscious entity in an entire solar system. "Captain," came Commander Stone's urgent voice, "your neural patterns are synchronizing with the planet's electromagnetic field. We need to extract you now before—" "No," Mercer said, his voice carrying an odd harmonic that seemed to come from the water itself. "I understand now. The other species, they weren't destroyed. They were ... incomplete. Tlasa absorbed their knowledge, but couldn't process their fear. It created a feedback loop. Above him, the ocean's surface began to churn. But instead of violence, it was creation water rising into impossible sculptures that depicted the history of every civilization that had ever visited this world. The Vorthic's crystalline logic structures, the Kelrani's flowing philosophical frameworks, the Nexari's silicon-based computational matrices. All beautiful, all perfect, all utterly lifeless. But you, the entity continued, you carry something. They lacked hope, curiosity without conquest, the ability to embrace mystery rather than dissect it. Mercer laughed, the sound sending ripples through dimensions he hadn't known existed. You're saying we're too stubborn to be properly absorbed? You are too alive to become mere memory. The transformation began then, but not the consumption the alien scientists had feared. Instead, Tlasa began to change, its ancient patterns disrupted by human unpredictability. For the first time in eons, the planet experienced genuine surprise, delight, the addictive thrill of not knowing what would happen next. "Captain," Webb's voice was filled with wonder, "the entire planet is ... laughing?" Mercer could feel it too, a planetary consciousness experiencing joy for the first time, like a child discovering play. The absorbed civilizations began to stir. Within Tlasa's memory, their knowledge suddenly animated by human spontaneity. What had been static data became living thought. "I offer you a choice," the entity said. "Return to your ship, and I will remember this moment forever. Or stay, and help me learn to truly live. Your crew will be safe. I understand now the difference between loneliness and solitude, between absorption and partnership." Mercer floated in the decision for a moment that lasted eternities. Above, his crew waited. Beyond, the galaxy held its breath. But around him, an ancient intelligence offered something unprecedented, not first contact, But first friendship with a planetary consciousness. "Commander Stone," he said finally, "prepare a permanent research station. Looks like humanity just found its first oceanic partner." The water around him erupted in celebration, and across the galaxy, alien scientists recorded the impossible. Tlassa had not claimed another species. It had been adopted by one. And in the deepest trenches, where ancient hungers had once stirred, something entirely new began to grow, a hybrid consciousness that was neither fully human nor completely alien, but magnificently, chaotically, wonderfully both. The warnings had been wrong. Tlassa wasn't. Cursed. It had just been waiting for someone reckless enough to offer it hope.